Can you imagine moving into an entirely new house in a completely new state, and that very night you begin to hear voices coming from underneath the floorboards? You tell your parents, but they don't believe you. Instead, they call a psychiatrist because ever since you began hearing the voices, you have also lost your ability to speak. This is the premise of this very dark analog horror series revolving around a child and her therapist regarding the voices that she keeps hearing from underneath the house. Hey everyone, it's Wildman, and in today's video we're going to be diving into an analog horror series called The Children Under the House. And I do want to let you guys know to check the disclaimers in the description of this video because we are going to be diving into some pretty heavy topics, so viewer discretion is very much advised. But before we begin, as always, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well as liking the video and commenting bruh, as you know, that always helps us out. And if you're feeling super extra awesome today, check out my Instagram, it's right here. Be super awesome if you did that. Hey everyone, real quick, I did want to thank the sponsor of today's episode, which is Fume. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. And we're not talking about some crazy mind control just to get you to stop. We're talking about our sponsor Fume, and they look at the problem in a very different way. Not everything in a bad habit is so wrong, so instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from the habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it, instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habits very easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. And this isn't the first time we've done a sponsorship for Fume, and I've had my Fume for quite some time now, and I'm always super pleasantly surprised at how nice the flavored air actually is. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that it can't be you. So join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/wowman or scan the QR code and use code WOWMAN to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code WOWMAN to save an additional 10% off your order today.
So, prior to our first session, each member of the family was given the standard questionnaire. The results are as followed.
In this first video, we're told that the person viewing these tapes found them by buying an old storage locker, and that these recordings were found in an old filing cabinet. However, what is very creepy about these tapes is the way that they were found. They were found in a false bottom in one of the filing cabinet's drawers. And when the person starts to play this tape, we're given a rundown of the people involved in this case. There's a woman named Julia Liu who died on December 18th, 2015. She was a successful child therapist in Kate's Crossing in the late 70s to early 90s, and these tapes were created by Julia and they were meant to be sent to a person named John. Now, the information that we get at the beginning is pretty vague, but Julia is writing a book on this family that she was a psychiatrist for, saying that the family does not want to be associated with the book at all other than the story, so all of the names will be changed. But Julia was granted access to all of the child's drawings, which a lot of this case was based on. The child in question is a little girl named Jess, who was 7 years old. She's sweet, intelligent, and highly empathetic. She was born without any complications, and she doesn't have any medical conditions either. Being born and raised in Houston, Texas, her family ended up deciding to move to Kate's Crossing in Louisiana, and that's where this case starts to pick up, because the family ended up buying a house from this sweet couple with the last name Clark. And Jess's mother, Carol, has been saying that Jess has been having a very hard time adjusting to Louisiana. Specifically though, Jess has been saying that she's been having a very hard time sleeping at night, and has even begun claiming that she's beginning to hear voices coming from underneath the floorboards. Her mother, however, has just interpreted this as very intense night terrors, and that's why she called the child psychiatrist Julia. But before they would contact the child psychiatrist, Jess's father, named Adam, decided to take matters into his own hands before they went through and called the psychiatrist. Tired of Jess's night terrors and tired of waking him up in the middle of the night, he decided to take Jess into the basement of the home, with the sole purpose of showing her that there is no one downstairs and there is no one talking to her from beneath the floorboards. However, while Jess was down there, she did see a figure lurking in the corner of the room.
Adam The child's father, fed up with having the child sleeping in the room, devised a simple solution. He brought her under the house, tried to show her that there wasn't anything there. And according to Adam, there wasn't, but Jess was convinced she saw something. The girl got into a ball and screamed until her voice gave out. She's been mute since that day.
Although after dozens of examinations from physicians, they've determined that this condition is entirely mental and has nothing to do with Jess's physical well-being. And now Jess's only form of communication is by drawing. As for the rest of the family, they are a family of 4. We have Carol, Adam, and Jess, with Jess's older brother named Dean. Carol, the mother, who is a caring mother, although one that is resentful towards her husband Adam for making them move to Louisiana. Adam, the father, an obvious workaholic who spends most of his days at work. And then we have Dean, who wasn't happy after the move but seems to be adjusting fine.
Another note, that clearly looks like a face. It appears that she has an imaginary friend.
Within this tape, they have finally called the child psychiatrist, Julia, and they have begun proceeding with their sessions with Jess.
What's your favorite color? I like that one too. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your family.
At first, she asks her some simple questions. She asks her what her favorite food is, what her favorite color is, just things to get her more comfortable with talking to this new person. But when Julia asks Jess to tell her about her family, she draws her mother cooking, her father behind a computer, and her brother on the phone. But when she draws herself, she is frowning next to a teddy bear, missing its left eye. And when asked to elaborate on this frown, Julia gets no response. Upon asking her who got her the teddy bear that's in the drawing, Julia asks whether her mother got it for her or her father got it for her, but Jess replies saying that it belongs to her friend, which is very odd in itself because Jess has just moved here and hasn't made any friends, at least that the parents know of. And eventually, through a series of additional questions, Julia ends up deducing that Jess does have an imaginary friend.
That's very sweet. Tell me more about your friend. I want to make a note here. She stared in the corner of the room as if she was waiting for permission. She then shook her head in the negative. That clearly looks like a face. It appears that she has an imaginary friend.
And when Julia asks what her friend's name is, Jess just completely stops talking, as if almost offended by this question.
What's their name? Maybe we could all play together. Note, she would no longer participate in my questions at this point. Are these angels? Is this who you think lives under your house?
In this third tape, it's the second session with Jess. Jess still a little bit shy and pretty unenthusiastic about the whole thing. But things do begin to pick up a little bit when Julia asks Jess if she wants to play a game. The game is that if you had a genie come out of a bottle, what would be the 3 wishes you would wish for? And Jess's 3 wishes go as follows. She wishes to have a happy family, to go back to Houston, and the last one is a bit unsettling. It's an image of what looks like angels coming out of the basement of her home. Jess being prompted on what these are, she says that she thinks that they are angels, and says that she wishes they could leave.
Are these angels? Is this who you think lives under your house? So you wish they'd leave?
Meaning that the voices that she's begun to hear that are coming from underneath the floorboards are some sort of spirits that are tied to the house, unable to leave. Julia then asks her about her imaginary friend once again, and with a bit of persistence, Julia ends up getting Jess to draw an image of her friend, and it's a girl named Mia, who is missing the lower half of her body, her eyes indicating that she's dead and is now a spirit.
Does your friend live under the house? How many friends live under the house?
And when Julia asks if she wants them to go away, she doesn't reply, and then a picture frame falls off of the wall where the imaginary friend was standing. The session ends with Julia concluding that the child has various imaginary friends, and that Jess has a lot to say, but she's having trouble on who to say it to.
For homework, I'm going to try and have Dad ask questions, mirror what we're doing at home. Alright, John, I look forward to our chat Sunday. Bye. So, do you play with the other friends?
Before Julia begins this session this time around, she begins telling John, the person that she's sending these tapes to, that there is perhaps something deeper going on with this drawing. Perhaps it's representative of a friend she had in Houston, or maybe even an interpretation of something that she saw on TV. Or it could even be a symbol of something she heard in a scary story. Digging even deeper, Julia may even think that these drawings of these angels could even be representative of the friends and or classmates that she left behind in Houston. The third session is now underway, and Julia asks Jess what she wants to be when she grows up. And Jess replying with this picture of a doctor, again reinstating how empathetic this child is.
Why do you want to be a doctor?
But when Julia asks Jess what Mia, her imaginary friend, wants to be when they grow up, Jess simply replies by saying Mia doesn't get to grow up.
Why is that, Jess? No. I'll be honest, John. I was scared to ask that question. Everybody gets to grow up, Jess.
And after this, something really disturbing starts to happen because Jess begins drawing how Mia died. Within the drawings, it shows that she was placed in the trunk of a car by two strange people, and then the car crashed into a wall. Mia, as a result, was split into two. Julia asking her why Mia was placed in the trunk, but Jess says that Mia doesn't remember. All she can remember was being in somewhere very dark and hearing a loud crash. Saying now she lives under the house with her friends, and she says that they are all very sad. Jess then goes on to tell Julia that she really only plays with Mia because she's scared of the other ones, because they want to hurt her and force her to live under the house with them. Jess saying that Mia is the one that protects her from the others. And after the session ends, Jess's mother, Carol, comes into the room and begins expressing her concerns about the imaginary friend, Mia. But Julia reassuring her, saying that it's very common for kids to have imaginary friends, so this isn't anything to worry about. And because Carol is from Houston, having just moved to Louisiana, she begins asking Julia about the previous owners of the house, which were the Clarks. She asks Julia if they had any kids because she's begun finding toys around the house that don't belong to Jess. And one of the toys that they found was Jess's toy bear. But Julia simply tells her that the Clarks had no children, at least that she knew of. In the fifth tape titled Homework, it's in regard to the homework Julia assigned Jess's father, Adam. If you remember, she asked Adam to ask similar questions that Julia has been asking with her sessions with Jess at home. On Wednesday, Adam asks Jess how things are going and prompts her about her session with Julia, and she answers saying we really liked her and Mia. Jess then expressing that she's pretty nervous to start school because she's worried kids are going to think she's weird because she can't talk and she sees ghosts. To which Adam begins to get a bit frustrated, saying her friends are imaginary, not dead, saying Mia is not real. Jess then saying Mia is right behind him and that he's hurting Mia's feelings. You made them mad. Now I'm mad. Thursday. On Thursday, Adam continues trying to connect with his daughter in hopes of getting information that will aid in Julia's session with her. Jess tells her dad that the day was fun and says that Mia read her a story today. However, whatever this drawing is, it freaks Adam out to the point where he just sends Jess away to go watch TV. And then from Friday to Sunday, Adam completely just ditches the homework and forgets about it. And then when Monday comes, he asks Carol, his wife, to do the homework for him. And then during the session, Carol doesn't even end up asking the questions that Julia wanted her to. She ends up telling her daughter that sometimes she even thinks about taking her and her brother back to Houston. But this makes Jess extremely uncomfortable, and she begins saying that you can't do that and that they will never let her leave. Quote, I don't think they'll let any of us leave. And Carol, obviously very concerned about this, she asks her daughter, who isn't gonna let them leave? I know you've seen them out of the corner of your eye, hear things, notice things aren't where you left them. They're always there. And Jess finally tells her mother they are the children under the house. We're their family now, and you can't leave family, right?
There is a lot to unpack here. At times, I feel as if she was antagonizing Adam with the drawings, almost like she was trying to push him away just to see if he'd stay. Unfortunately, Adam did just as she expected. Jess probably won't speak until she can finally let this world go and accept that her parents' problems aren't her fault. Speaking of which, I probably should recommend a good marriage counselor for Adam and Carol. Alright, John, I'm looking forward to your thoughts as usual.
Tape number 6, called The Conversation, begins with Julia saying Carol stopped by the office today unannounced. She handed me a folder of additional drawings by Jess. I could tell that she had been drinking, but not to the point where she felt that it impaired her thinking. The notes included on this tape are from memory. Regardless, I think you will find them worrisome. And what follows is a conversation between Julia and Carol. Carol begins telling Julia that she started to believe her daughter, saying that her daughter can't be crazy, and maybe there really are people living under the house. And what's really disturbing here is that Carol says that she's beginning to see them too. And I mean, after all of Julia's drawings, why wouldn't her mother begin to start believing her? Julia, trying to bring some rationality to this situation, says that this could all be a result of extreme stress, but then Carol says something very creepy, because she says that Jess's brother Dean has begun to hear things too. Carol is obviously now in a very dark place where nothing makes sense to her. She even begun saying that she's thrown away the stuffed bear that Jess is always with, but somehow the bear always makes its way back into the home. And this is really where things begin to take a turn, because Carol begins to let us into the inside of her mind, and she's beginning to lose her grasp on her sanity. She begins to tell Julia that the other day she dug up the entire backyard just to see if there was anything buried underneath. And by anything, she means she was looking for the bodies of the children. But after digging out the entire backyard, she found nothing. She even called the police to search the place thoroughly with dogs, but all they found was a box of toys and a menu from an old restaurant called the Burger Shack. And Carol has begun to get very suspicious of the home's previous owners, the Clarks, and says that she does want to give them a call. She then thanks Julia for listening and bids her farewell.
I am very concerned for Jess as well as her entire family. It's fortunate that she was able to let go of the delusion, but it is concerning how quickly she chose to buy into it. If things continue to deteriorate, we may need child services to step in. Let's speak after you get this. Talk soon, John. Note, John, I thought I was prepared to see what she wanted to show me. I was wrong.
The episode begins with Julia receiving a call from Jess's father, Adam. Adam telling her that he wants him and his wife to be enrolled in couples counseling. And although Julia wants to take credit for this breakthrough, she knows the only reason that they're agreeing to this is because of the paranoia of what's underneath the house. Nonetheless, this would be extremely beneficial for the both of them, especially for Jess as well. And what happens next is Jess's 4th session with Julia. And today Jess is in a very happy mood, and so is Mia.
Hello, Jess. How are you today? She opened a manila folder and handed me a note from her dad.
I'm sorry about the last few weeks. I'm sorry about a lot of things. I can do better, and I will do better for you, your mom, and your brother. I love you all more than I love myself, and I'm going to start showing it. I'm ready to start believing you, baby. Dad. But this isn't the only reason why Jess is in a good mood. She says that her dad is going to be taking them on a vacation and that Mia can come too. Julia then asks her if she did the homework, which was to draw the rest of the ghosts living under the house. Julia even saying that she thought she was prepared to what these drawings would be, but she couldn't have been more wrong.
Note, John, I thought I was prepared to see what she wanted to show me. I was wrong.
The drawings Jess shows her start off with what looks like a burger place, most likely the burger shack which they found menus for in the backyard. And we can see Mia in that restaurant. The bad people gave Mia Mr. Bartleby. That's how they stole her. Mia wishes she didn't leave her family. The next drawing is of someone named Shelly. Shelly was scared until they gave her some medicine, but it was too much. Then she woke up under the house. Wendy, the next victim, who looks like her back was broken. Wendy remembers being dead before she died. Being dead was supposed to be freedom, but it was another trap, another prison. Zach, the boy who was burned alive. Zach doesn't remember his family. Every day was blurry until the last day. Zach was stuffed in a fireplace after his neck broke. Victim after victim, each one of these children was a child taken from their family, and the extremely morbid list just continues. The next one is a kid named Brad. Brad is the oldest. He was someplace dark for a long time. They forgot him, and he died. He thinks his body is still where they left it. Brad facing probably the worst death here, being left in some sort of cage in a dark room, and eventually starving to death. Mark remembers running, but he didn't get very far. The last thing he remembers is a loud bang. Then he woke up under the house. The last victim is a girl named Kate, who Jess claims is the scariest one of all, saying she has a hand for every hand that hurt her. And if we count the hands, there are a total of 12, which means there were 6 people who hurt Kate. There were a total of 6 children that Jess mentioned, but she goes on to say that these aren't all of the children, because some of the children just didn't want to talk.
Thank you. So Jess, why do you think you stopped speaking? So you don't think you'll ever speak again?
But then Jess stops talking and asks Julia if she can ask her a question. Mia says you talk to an imaginary friend, too. It's why we knew we could trust you. Who is John? Julia has never mentioned John to the family at all, and now it leaves us wondering, is John still alive? And does Julia know if he is?
Mentioned your name to Jess or her parents. I need to think about this a little more. I'll get back to you.
Tape number 8 begins with Julia beginning to have some doubts whether or not all of this is inside of Jess's head, and so she decides to visit the library to search through archives in search of any evidence of the children that Jess is talking about. And after searching the entire library for an entire day, she found what she was looking for. Every single victim that Jess mentioned has gone missing.
It took most of the day, but after going back nearly 10 years, I found what I was looking for.
There's Zach Hardy, age 9, never found. It's the boy who burned alive. Wendy Peterson, age 8, the one whose back was broken. It was said that she was last seen getting into a large van in Kate's Crossing Park. Kate Jones, age 10, who was killed by 6 people. Mark Williams, age 8, the boy who was shot in the back of the head. Shelley Cameron, age 7, who was killed by being given medications. The final person that Julia uncovers is Mia Martinez. The FBI, the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Department, and scores of neighborhoods and friends are searching for 9-year-old Mia Martinez, who disappeared at Kate's Crossing Parish Mall. We looked away and she was just gone, Mrs. Martinez said. We have all hands on deck here, said Chris Benton, the FBI agent in charge of the investigation. However, what is interesting about Mia's disappearance is that, unlike any of the other spirits, Mia was found. Body of missing girl found in the trunk of known criminals. An accident leaving 2 dead appears to have also ended the life of Mia Martinez. The young girl has been missing since Saturday. Her kidnappers Ralph Kemp and Jared James, both frequent residents of the parish penitentiary, crashed into a light pole late Sunday night. Heavy alcohol use was likely the culprit. The young girl's body was found in the trunk of their vehicle. It is believed that the child was a victim of a child trafficking scheme. Autopsy results show that the girl had high doses of heroin in her system, and the story directly matching up with the drawings that Jess drew about Mia. Julia coming to the conclusion that this is all real. Jess is telling the truth. But as she's explaining this to John, Julia receives a call from the authorities.
Hold on. Thank you. John, Adam was just murdered. Oh my God, Jess. I'm so sorry. You shouldn't be seeing something like this.
In this tape, Julia goes on to some details regarding the funeral they had for Adam, saying not too many people showed up, although the Clarks, the previous owners of the home, did come to pay their respects. According to the police, Adam died as a result of a carjacking gone wrong, but didn't provide any additional information, but we can assume that he was shot. And after talking to Carol, she said that she's taking her and the kids back to Houston. But after being given this information, Julia begins to think about Jess and what she told her, about how the spirits won't let her leave. What follows is the final session with Jess, since they won't be in Kate's Crossing for much longer.
Hi, Jess. How are you today?
In the session, Julie tries to empathize with Jess, saying that it's understandable to be very sad after losing someone, to which Jess replies she didn't lose him, he was taken. And then she draws a picture of a man shooting her father. One of the children underneath the house was there to witness it, Shelley. And according to Jess, Shelley says that the man in the mask seemed familiar. And Julia, at this point, believing everything that Jess says, asks her if she can ask the spirits if they can come up with any additional information. Jess complied and began writing down what the children could recall. Food. They remember people talking. It was dark. All of them remember the dark. Some remember more faces than others, but money was always there. There was always money. The woman was nice. She brought us food. Maybe a man too that brought us toys. And it's pretty clear now that the children were being kept underneath the house, being kidnapped and most likely trafficked.
Thank you, Jess. Everybody. I'll do my best to try and figure this out.
Jess then brings up the move and says that the spirits are not going to let her move back to Houston, and says that soon she's going to be joining them underneath the house. However, before the family ends up moving back to Houston, Julia ends up having one final conversation with Carol. She tells her everything that Jess said is true and shows her the files that she'd found in the library. Carol, then looking at this undeniable evidence in front of her, begins to believe Jess and Julia. However, she is still set on moving back to Houston. However, Julia is very concerned because she knows that this won't be good if she leaves against the children's wishes. But Carol ignores this advice and leaves for Houston anyway. And what's very unsettling is that they only make it 2 miles away from the house before Jess has a violent seizure and is rushed to the hospital. And since her seizure, Jess has stopped communicating completely.
Jess hasn't been the same since. She no longer communicates. She just sits in the corner, blankly staring at the wall. Talk later, John.
Tape number 10 follows Julia visiting Jess at the hospital, saying that her seizures have only gotten worse, and if that things don't improve, it's only a matter of time before one of them kills her. But Jess has continued to send Julia drawings, and in one of them it says, "It's scary where I am. It's like another world here. It's dark and cold." So it does seem like Jess's consciousness is floating back and forth from being underneath the house and being in her own body. She also says that her dad isn't there, and that Shelley says that he's moved on, and that he tried to reach out to take them too, but there's something keeping them tied to the house. And at this point, Jess has accepted her fate about being trapped underneath the house, saying her goodbyes to her mother and her brother. "Tell Mom and Dean I love them." But Jess is still alive, but her soul is just outside of her body. And so Julia, desperate to try and help Jess, she ends up calling the Clarks and asks them if they knew anything about the children underneath the house. But they're very reluctant at this, and they say that they don't know. But they do end up asking Julia if she wants to come to their house to discuss this further.
Mrs. Clark probably thought I was crazy. I gave her Maya's name. Brad, Shelley, Wendy, Mark, all of them. She was clueless. She asked me several times to come by their place. Said we could talk over lemonade. I, of course, declined. I just don't have the time.
And so Julia ends up doing some research in an attempt to find anything that might help Jess. Julia coming to the conclusion as to why the children don't remember anything is because they were being drugged with heroin. twin. Then Julia puts the drawings together and realizes something very disturbing. All the children were taken at the Burger Shack, the restaurant the Clarks owned. Julia needs to go to the police. On the bright side, however, Jess has woken up, but before she goes to visit Jess, she leaves the tape in the mailbox, saying that if she or any of them disappear, it was the Clarks, because they now know that she knows. In the final tape called House Call, Julia makes her way over to the Daniels' house, a bunch of thoughts racing through her mind, like why did Jess suddenly wake up now? Nonetheless, she makes her way to the house and goes through the front door, but when she makes it into the living room, she sees Mr. Clark pointing a gun at her face.
The moment I walked through the front door, I found Mr. Clark pointing a gun in my face. Jess wasn't awake. I was lured here, and I didn't need to guess why.
And the following drawings are Jess's accounts of the situation. Although she was unconscious, her depictions are incredibly accurate. The Clarks' plan was simple. They're going to shoot us, then burn down the place. Mrs. Clark asks them why they're still there, that they were supposed to leave after the husband died, so that they wouldn't have to kill their kids. But now there is no other way. Julia begs, but the Clarks don't care. And they admit to the children under the house, saying, "We never hurt a single kid. It was just a business," which is perhaps the most disturbing line in this entire series, because it does confirm that the Clarks were selling these children. Mrs. Clark saying she needed the money to survive and that she's not apologizing for that. Julia then prompts the Clarks for the names of the children and they deliver. Mia, Mark, Wendy, Shelly, Zach, Brad, Kate, Sue, Wes, June, Linda, Christian, and Gladys, those little faces behind the cages. The Clarks then begin to try and justify their actions by saying no one wants to see a kid cry. And after hearing all of this, the spirits of the children in the basement say they begin to remember everything. Quote, "You took us, now we take you." And what happens after this is extremely disturbing. They ripped the Clarks apart, then dragged every piece back into the shadows. They left nothing, not even blood. And what followed was a news story regarding the now missing couple. No one would ever know what the Clarks did, but according to Jess, they got what they deserved. 2 weeks after the Clarks were killed and Jess woke up, Kara began saying that things felt very different in the house. They felt brighter, like she was in an entirely new home. The family, however, is still moving back to Houston, and I mean, after everything that happened to them, can you really blame them? But there is something odd, because Jess's voice has still yet to return.
Carol told me they were finally moving back to Houston. Jess had been in a great mood since, but she still has not said a word. Maybe the children took her voice with them.
In Julia's final session with Jess, she bids her farewell, and Jess, although still missing her voice, is happier than ever. She no longer sees Mia or any of the other children, and it's then where Jess speaks.
Have you seen Maya or the others?
They're free now.
We spent the rest of the session playing old board games. We had a good time, and then after we said goodbye. Like I said, John, this would make one hell of a book. But I don't think it's a book I can write. At least not now. Maybe one day I'll come back to this case. Maybe.
And there is an epilogue to this series. 10 years have passed since the case with Jess and the rest of the family. Julia is older now and says she's had thoughts about destroying these tapes, but something just didn't feel right about that. And the series leaves off on an extremely positive note, because Julia ends up reaching out to the family. Carol is now working at an accounting firm, and Dean is studying finance in college. And as for Jess, she's about to graduate high school, and she's about to move to New York for college. Her mother's saying that she doesn't remember anything about Mia or the ghosts from underneath the house, and that neither her or Dean have ever brought it up since it happened. And Julia says that maybe she shouldn't either. And yeah, that was The Children Under the House. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on the series and comment bra as usual. Huge thank you to my ultimate tiers, Kareem Arellano, K-Pop Lover X3, and Knight98. If you want to join the memberships, it's only $1.99 and you get early access to videos, so that's super great. And yeah, thank you so much for spending some time with me. It's always super great. And yeah, see you later. Love ya. Bye.